everyone, my name is Tan-Yi. I'm a high school senior. In this video, I want to share with you how I study for the SAT by myself and some tips and advice for preparing and taking your own SAT. I know not everyone can afford to take SAT classes or private tutors, so I'm here to tell you that it's completely possible to study for it on your own and do really well on the SAT. I'm gonna break this video into a few parts and I will put the timestamp for each part in the description down below, so if you want to skip around, feel free. I took the SAT 3 times and my highest composite is 1510 and my super score is 1540 with a 750 in reading and writing and 790 in math. I go to a public high school in New York City. I did take a few SAT diagnostic tests to see where my starting point was, and I was consistently getting around 1350. However, those diagnostics tests that I took were not official, meaning they didn't come from the College Board, so I don't know how accurate those test results are. I used 4 prep books to study for the SAT, and I bought all of these 4 books on Amazon. So if you want more information, you can go on Amazon, search each book and read the description, and also go down to the customer reviews to get more insights. I gave those books away to my friends who were taking their SATs in senior year because I had already finished taking it my junior year. So I don't have those books with me right now, but I will put the picture, the title, and the price of each book in the video. The first book that I used to study for the SAT is called SAT Prep Black Book by Mike Barrett. This book is so helpful. It's nothing like the conventional prep book companies like Barron or Kaplan. I think it's much better. It's extremely comprehensive and detailed. If you can only buy one book, definitely buy this one. This book is broken down into many parts. The first is going to be reading section strategies and writing section strategies, and then the math section strategies. And then the author Mike, he goes into what he calls walkthroughs. Basically, you will print out 4 official SAT practice tests published by the College Board, and you do them, and then you follow through with Mike's explanation of each question. This is really helpful because if you just do the official SAT practice test and you use College Board's answer key, you don't get much out of it because it just tells you the answer and maybe a very brief explanation. But with Mike's walkthroughs, you learn why the College Board asks the question that way, what keywords to look for, and what you need to keep in mind when dealing with different categories of the question. I think this book is the main factor responsible for my success on the SAT, and I highly recommend you guys try it out. Now, the second book that I used to study for the SAT is The Critical Reader, The Complete Guide to SAT Reading by Erica Meltzer. So as you can tell, this is for the reading section of the SAT. It has multiple chapters for different kinds of reading questions, and they have practice questions at the end of each chapter for you to solidify your skills. Personally, I did find this book to be somewhat helpful for tackling the reading portion of the SAT. However, I also think it was a little more complicated than necessary. Like, it touches upon some really complex concepts that don't really show up on the test. But overall, it's a good book, and I think if you have the money and you have the time, you definitely should invest in this book and really study hard into it. The third book that I used to study for my SAT is called The Ultimate Guide to SAT Grammar, also by Erica Meltzer. This is a great book. If you want to master the writing section of the SAT, get this book. I do really well on the grammar section because of this book and the writing chapter in the Black Book. This book has every concept that you need for the grammar section of the test. I think you should totally get it. Whether you're someone trying to master the writing portion or you're struggling with it, this book really helps. and it just lists out all the key concepts that you need to know by chapter, so it's really easy and organized for you to study. The last book that I used to study for the SAT, and this is for the math section, is 500 New SAT Math Problems by Steve Warner. This book is not that helpful. I don't recommend you buying it. I think it's a waste of money because this book doesn't have any concept or content review. It just has 500 math practice questions, and you can get those same questions from Khan Academy, so there is no need for a separate prep book like this. A general overview: on weekends, I study those 3 books, chapters, and practice questions. And then on weekdays, Monday to Friday, I use Khan Academy. 15 minutes a day, not a lot, usually 10 questions, and it just helps to solidify those strategies that I learned from those books on the weekends. Basically, I just see how many chapters each book has, and I divide it by the number of weeks I have until my first SAT date to make sure I get through all of them. So it's usually around 1 to 2 chapters per book for each weekend. So that means I'll maybe do 1 chapter from the reading book, 2 chapters from the writing book, and then a portion from the black book, plus a official test section, plus a walkthrough for that section from the black book. I will make these SAT study schedule on Google Doc for January, February, and March, and I will write down what chapters of each book I want to do for each week, and also how many practice tests I want to get through by what time, and also some little notes about each section of the test that I should focus on. To give you an example of how I planned, for the weekend of January 5th to January 6th, I would do chapter 2 from the SAT reading book and chapter 4 from the SAT writing book, and also the reading training from the black book. And after I read the training, I learn the strategies, I would do the reading portion of the College Board's official test number 1, and afterwards I would do a walkthrough of that section with Mike's black book. So that was the plan for 1 weekend. February is the same, so I would say the weekend of February 9th to February 10th, do chapter number 10 from SAT reading book, chapter 17 to 13 from SAT writing book, and then I will go through the black book math training. I would do section 3 of the official test number 3, no calculator, and then I would do the walkthrough with the black book after I finish the test. So now I'm going to talk about the daily breakup of my weekends. I recommend you just write down your weekend plans on some sort of planner, some sort of book. So what I do is I write down Sunday, January 13, 2019. From 8 to 10, I'm gonna do black book math training, page 182 to 220. And then from 10 to 11, I'm gonna do chapter 2 from the SAT reading book. From 1 to 2:15, I'm gonna do SAT writing chapter number 5, diction and idioms. So I basically write down which chapter for which SAT prep book that I'm going to read and do for what time of the day. That way I know it's there waiting for me and I will just go do it. I know I've said a lot and I might be all over the place, so if you have any confusion or if you have any questions, please just ask and I will try my best to clarify. So first thing, I strongly advise you guys to only work with official practice tests published by the College Board or official practice questions on Khan Academy, because they are designed by the College Board. They are predictable. They are a perfect representation for what you will see on the actual test. I don't recommend using outside source practice questions that you see online or in those big prep book companies because they are not accurate. Sometimes they even make it like more difficult than what the test questions actually are. But that's not helpful because you need to practice with questions that are almost identical or extremely similar to the actual questions that you will see in order for you to really be familiar with the format of the test. It's not helpful to practice with questions that are harder or easier than the actual test. So with that being said, you should only find practice tests published by the College Board, which there are 8 of them. And for practice questions, you just go on Khan Academy. It has great practice questions that are recognized by the College Board. It's extremely important to analyze all of the practice tests that you've done. It's not enough to just do a practice test, grade it, and then just put it aside. It's really, really important for you to analyze your past mistakes and to analyze the test designs of each practice test. Otherwise, you will just keep getting the same score, and that's not helpful. If your time is tight, it's much better to carefully go over and analyze maybe the first 4 practice tests rather than cramming and brushing over all 8 practice tests. It's really quality over quantity. You want to get to know each practice test really well. You have to reflect on the mistakes that keep you from getting the correct answers and how you can avoid them. You have to know why you made that mistake, the reasons that you got that question wrong. Maybe you didn't read carefully enough, maybe you didn't think strategically enough about the question, or maybe you forgot to use the strategies that you learned against that question. Whatever the reason is, you have to know that reason. And next time you encounter a similar question, you have to remind yourself, oh, last time I got this question wrong, so this time I'm gonna try not to fall into the trap, or this time I'm gonna make a more conscious effort to avoid careless mistakes. Planning is really important, guys. If you can, just take a weekend to set some time aside and plan out your SAT schedule. Earlier, I said I use Google Docs. You can do the same thing. So you can basically make like a chart on Google Doc and fill out the date, and then next to it, bullet point all the tasks that you want to complete. Write down what chapter from which book you want to complete each weekend. That's really helpful for you to know what's coming and what you need to do each weekend. You will learn a lot of strategies and different skills from these books, whether it be the Black Book, the SAT reading, or the SAT writing. But when you're doing the practice test, your brain has to make a conscious effort to implement those strategies and to use them to get the questions correct. Strategies don't work if you don't implement them on your practice sessions. Don't wait till test day to use those strategies because you need to build a habit of using them in the first place. In order to do well by the method of self-studying, you need to have a high degree of self-discipline. So if you make a plan, you need to tell yourself, stick with that plan. If you say you're gonna read this chapter, you need to go and read that chapter. If you say you're gonna complete this practice test this weekend, then you're gonna go do it. Self-discipline is very, very important, and I'm sure a lot of you can do that. So just do what you have to do what you said you're gonna do, and follow through with your plan, and I'm sure success will be waiting for you on the other end. It might be helpful for you to write down some final tips, like those tips that I just said. You can write them down in simple language on a post-it, and then you can make multiple post-its and stick them to the back side of your test ticket, so that on test day you can take it out and you can flip to the back side and you can quickly review all the things that you need to keep in mind. If you encounter a difficult question, skip it and come back to it later. So first is you don't have a lot of time for each question. So if you feel like you have no idea what this question is talking about, then just skip it and come back to it later. And second is, especially for math questions, if you come back to it like 15 minutes later after you finish all the test questions, your mind will be more fresh and you can reread the question and something will just pop to your brain and you will just know how to solve the problem. Another reason for that tip is Every question is worth the same amount of points on the test, so it's better for you to go through the whole section first and take all the easy questions and get those easy points, and then tackle the harder questions. Check most questions using a different approach. So when you do each question, except for the really easy ones, for the more complicated ones, try to quickly check each question using a different approach. For example, if you did this question using algebra, see if you can use your calculator to double check your work. Don't make a careless mistake, please. Like, it's so easy to make careless mistake. Please read the question slowly and carefully, and like keep your head clear. If they're asking you what is x plus y, make sure you don't stop when you find x, and you need to continue to find y, and then you add them together. So you don't have to solve a problem using the conventional methods. If something else is easier, then do that. If using your calculator is easier, then do that. You don't have to like write down every step, because nobody's gonna look at it. The test only cares about what you bubble in. My tip for the reading section is to focus on what the question is actually saying, not what it might be trying to say, at least when you're reading SAT passages. Don't try to overanalyze anything. Just stick to what the author is actually saying and pick the answer that matches with the literal meaning of the passage. I think in general, for the whole test, you just have to keep your head clear and consciously use what you learn in those books against real questions. Last and final tip, if there is anything you need to remember before you take the test, is you need to sleep early the day before. No studying the night before. Sleep early. Assuming you're waking up 6 a.m. the next morning, I recommend you go to sleep 8:30 to 9:30. If you're taking the test and you feel sleepy, you don't have enough energy, you're not focusing on what the question is saying, then you just wasted months of studying for the test, okay? You just wasted all your efforts. Don't do that to yourself. Sleep early. That's the most important thing. If you have enough sleep, your head will be sober and you will do better on the test. Alright, I think that's the end of this video. If you guys learned something from it, if you found this video to be helpful, don't forget to like this video. And if you have any more questions about anything, about college, about applying to college, please let me know and I will do my best to help you. I'm sure all of you will do really, really well on your SAT and on your college applications and in your life and beyond, okay? So best of luck to you guys, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye! More. Oh my god, there's so many mosquitoes.